There's a very straightforward way to figure out if you are a person who likes to be needed. All you have to do is look at the relationships that are in your life right now, the most important relationships. So we're talking about the relationship with your parents, the relationship with your significant other, the relationship with your siblings, if you have a best friend, like what kind of relationships are you having right now with your friend group? And if you can look at those relationships and you can see your needs are being met, it's sort of a balanced exchange of feelings, of information, of favors, of activities. It's not stressful. You're not giving of yourself without getting anything in return. Then you're probably not a person who needs to be needed. But if you are giving your last bit of money to someone who you care about, but not leaving any for yourself, if you are not getting your needs met by your partner, you're asking for things that are just not happening. You've asked 1, 2, 10 times before, and they're not happening. You may be in interactions with your parents that are just frustrating, but yet you still show up and you still give, even though you're not getting what it is that you need in return. Robin Norwood talks about being a person who needs to be needed. It's really not a healthy thing. Like, it might sound like you like to be there for people, but that's not what it's about. It's more about needing crises and needing other people to bring a crisis to you so that you can feel important, so that you can feel helpful, that you're doing something for another person. It stresses you out, it wears you down, but you still do it. In this chapter of Women Who Love Too Much, Robin Norwood uses Melanie as the example for being a woman who needs to be needed, and how in her childhood, her needs were not met. Her mother was not mentally stable. Her father was working 2 jobs most of the time, so he was not there. And so she ended up taking on a lot of the roles that the adults, her mother, should have been doing in the home, and no one was there for Melanie. Melanie had this compulsion to nurture, to take care of a man who could not reciprocate, would not reciprocate. He was basically cheating on her for their entire relationship, absent out of the home. They had children together. He was always in New York looking for his next big break, never really present with her. But he was getting exactly what he needed from her. He was getting the money. He was getting the emotional support when he was feeling stressed out or not with his other boo. And the two of them sort of worked together in a way that made the relationship, you know, the back and forth. It takes 2 unhealthy people to maintain an unhealthy relationship. And they were playing off of each other. Him being absent, her wanting him to change. This whole like idea of wanting another person in a relationship to change. You need to be good with who they are right now and stop thinking about in the future, somewhere down the line, if he would only just this, if she would only just that. No, if that's what you're waiting for, I am telling you, it's really not in your best interest. An important part of this chapter that I wanted to talk about was the perfect storm for incest. It's very taboo, but one of the things that I'm reflecting on even more recently is a lot of people have trauma, and significant trauma, and sexual trauma, and physical trauma. And often these things are perpetrated by people they trust, people close to them. In the topic of incest, this is a family member who is doing this to you. Robin Norwood talks about concepts that were presented to me when I was learning about psychology as the Oedipal and Electra complex. So young children, very young, we're talking like 3 years old. Kids who think that, you know, they can do magic. Like when things happen, they attribute it to like the most outrageous reasons because their mind is not all the way developed. So like these really young kids, if they grow up in like a nuclear home where there's a mom and a dad, masculine, feminine, they want their opposite sex parent, like all to themselves. They create in their mind this story that if they could only get rid of mom, if it's a girl, she can have dad out to herself. Or if it's a boy, if he can only get rid of dad, then he'll have mom out to himself. These are very common themes in childhood development. What usually happens is the child ends up realizing, yo, my parent is not going anywhere. There's no way that I can have them all to myself. I guess mom can have him. I guess dad can have, mom. They grow through this and realize that their parent is not like their competition. Their parent is there to take care of them. Problems can arise if they lose the parents. So we're talking like young kids, magical thinking, right? They think they can make things happen. These are kids who think they're responsible for their parents' divorce. So in the case of Melanie, she lost her mother. Her mother actually died. Not when she was young, but she had like an absent emotionally, her mother like lived in a back room and never came out. She was so ill and ended up dying by suicide. So all of these feelings from childhood, the dysfunction, nobody talking about feelings, could have led to an incestuous relationship with her and her father. And Robin Norwood outlines it, I think, so well that there's never any instance where a child is responsible for their own sexual assault. No one, right? Just speaking in general, no one is ever responsible for their own sexual assault. If someone is being assaulted by someone else, that other person is responsible because there's no consent. There's a complete violation of boundaries. There's harm to the other person. So if there was incest in this relationship with Melanie and her father would have been 100% responsible for it. But I want to highlight that there are these underlying feelings that people can have because of the dysfunction that's happening in their families. And I know there is so much shame attached to incest. There is so much shame attached to sex, to sexual trauma. And I just want to say it's not your fault. It's not your fault that adults are supposed to take care of children, that your parent is supposed to protect you and not take advantage of you. You deserve good things. Life happens, right? And here on my channel, I really hope that you can see, even though I think it's clear I have not suffered a significant amount of trauma. I have had some childhood issues, but you are resilient. You can do hard things. You can create the life that you want. You can bounce back. You can have a story to tell to help other people if you want. Robin Norwood, I think, does such a great job of normalizing, of instilling hope in people's lives that even if, so like Melanie in this chapter did not end up having an incestuous relationship with her father, but even if she did, she could learn in the present to recognize the patterns of behavior that's right. She's an adult now. She's not even living at home, any of that. But she can recognize that parts of what happened in her childhood weren't her fault. That, life just sort of gave her the short end of the stick. But now she can make all the decisions to make changes in her life. And change is a process. I really like to think about my evolution being like this 10-year process. Like I have been self-working, development, evolving for the last 10 years. I've only gotten better. It's been hard, challenging, lots of tears in between, but I'm very grateful that now, after becoming aware of the patterns, right? Through this book, through therapy, through like a lot of journaling, the patterns in my life are so much more healthy. And so I just would hope that I could still be some sort of an inspiration to you, to someone else. The focus of this book and what I want you to understand is it starts with you, growing you and learning you. Remember to subscribe, hit the like button, share this with someone who you think it may benefit. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching.